Hey everybody, I'm Wes Stuckey. This is going to be a quick product walkthrough on the Trendnet 5 gig outdoor wireless bridge kit. The part number is the TEW-840APBO2K. That is the kit. It does come pre-configured as a wireless point-to-point bridge. It does come with its own PoE injectors, is outdoor rated. This is going to be a basic walkthrough on how they're configured. A couple things you'll need from the labels on the back. The first is the IP address for each one. One is 192.168.10.50 and the other is 10.51. And of course you'll need the password for administration. So the next part, as we look through the manual, is this should be your first initial configuration. A laptop or a computer straight to the LAN port on the PoE injector. PoE injector plugged into power, and then the other side of the PoE injector plugged into the LAN 1 port on the bottom of unit 1. And we're going to start with the 192.168.10.50 unit as our first unit. So we need to configure our computer to talk to that network and make sure we're in the same subnet. So this is a Windows 10 machine. This is how I usually will get to changing my adapter settings. So we need to set our IP address. Look for your wired connection here in your network connections of your control panel. You can also go control panel, network and internet, network connections. And you can double click on your wired connection and do details. And that's going to show you your basic configuration. So this is set up for DHCP, but there's no DHCP server. So we're going to need to set up a static IP. So I'm going to go properties, TCP v4, and set my IP. I want to be in the same subnet with a different address. So the first three numbers are going to be the same, and the last one is going to be different. So I'm going to be 192.168.10.10 and in a class C subnet 255 3 times. I don't need to worry about gateway or DNS servers. All right. So I can hit OK. I go to details. It'll take just a second for this to change. So now DHCP is turned off and I have a static IP address assigned. So then normally I would launch a command prompt, go to your start and do CMD, and you want to make sure you run this as administrator so you have access to some diagnostic tools inside Windows. And I'm going to use the ping commands, and it's ping space and whatever the IP address. In this case, it's 192.168.10.50. It's going to send out 4 packets, and as long as you get replies, sent 4, received 4, lost 0, that means that we're talking to some device at 192.168.10.50. So the next thing you can do, this is Chrome. I'm just going to open it up in my browser and make sure I type in http:// in recent years, it seems to want to push you to a search engine if you don't do that. And here's the login screen for the first unit. And so this is the main screen that you'll see when you log in. Gives us our device name, our MAC addresses, time and date, firmware, of course, our IP settings, our local IP settings, and some information about how our wireless LAN is configured. So the main tabs you're going to use are, of course, going to be device status, connections, which is going to show what access points this unit is programmed to be in a bridge with, or any connections to the unit, and signal strength, some other things like that. Network. Under basic, you're going to find the basic IP settings. Under wireless, you're going to find your wireless configuration. And you'll also may use the tools, change your password if you want to change your password, and update any firmware. So we're just going to go to the basic IP settings for this unit. So let's say we didn't want our unit to be 192.168.10.50. We want it to be on DHCP, or we wanted to change it to a different static IP. This is where we would do it. So I'm just going to make a change here just to show you how this works. So once I scroll down to the bottom, click Save, it's going to ask you to apply these changes. So if there's a bunch of changes you want to make, you can make a bunch of them and then commit them all at once, or you can do them one at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my changes, and it's going to kind of tell me what I'm doing, what changes, and I could revert those changes or I could apply them. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply them. So if I had changed my unit to DHCP, I would have to find its IP address, and I could do that with an IP scanner tool like Angry IP. I could also access my router table to try and see what the hostname was, or what the current IP was. But another thing I could do is actually try to ping the hostname. So by default, the hostname is going to be the part number on the Trendnet unit. So simply do ping space TEW-840APBO, and it's actually going to come up with its current IP. Of course, mine is still set to static, but if it had a new IP, it would come up here. So we could also use this hostname when we're programming if you wanted to do that. So make sure to type in the HTTP // and then the hostname, and it'll bring you to the login screen. So that's just another way to access the unit if the IP address has changed or you're setting this up on DHCP. So the next area that we're going to go into is going to be wireless. We're going to go to network wireless, and this is how the wireless is configured by default. So there's your host name. If you wanted to change your host name and you had several units, you could add, a -1, and then your URL or your host name is going to, include that change. So by default, they're set up for TDMA. There are instances where we would use CSMA. I would encourage you to read up on that if you're interested. And then we look at the operation mode. So we have a few different modes that we can be in. An access point, you can be simply a regular access point, a client bridge. We could just do a point-to-point bridge but still provide Wi-Fi. We could do a WDS access point, which is what this is configured by default. And the other unit, which would be like a receiver side, would be a WDS station. So the WDS access point can be a wireless bridge, and it can also provide some local Wi-Fi for configuration. So by default, the 192.168.10.50 unit is a WDS access point. So here we could look at channel configuration, and by default it's going to be on channel 48. So your gray box is the channel that is selected. So by default it's on channel 48. We could make any changes here, and of course we could use the AP detection and do a scan, and this would help us determine our best channel. It's not going to show non-Wi-Fi devices, but it will show other Wi-Fi devices in our area. And we can scroll down a little bit more, and we can see that our 5 gig is in TDMA, and here is our SSID, and we could go in here and make changes if we needed to. So here we could change the encryption, the security mode, the passphrase. This is the key that is exchanged between the 2 units to encrypt the wireless traffic. There really isn't a lot that you should need to change here, but if you were setting one of these up manually, this is where you would do it. So you also have a management interface. So this is going to be another SSID that's broadcast. Let me turn my wireless on here, and you'll be able to see these 2 names being broadcast across the wireless network. So if you wanted to change those, this is where we would change them. And of course, if you wanted to change the passphrase or any of these settings for this local Wi-Fi, you could do that as well here. So this is good if you want to try to use this to set them up. You could actually do a wireless connection. You could have some challenges doing that using a Wi-Fi connection, but a wired connection is going to be better in my opinion. But you certainly can use the Wi-Fi connection as well. So now it's time to get the other unit set up. So this is your initial setup here. You'll notice a couple things. The second access point we already have this one on the right hand side. So as we add this one on the left, we're simply going to plug in the PoE injector to power, and then we're going to do the PoE port to the LAN 1 port on the second unit. So the thing that you don't want to do is have a LAN cable going from the LAN port on the PoE injector to your network switch or back to your network, because if this wireless bridge is active, you have basically created a loop. If you add this additional cable, you're going to create a loop in your network. So the network will become unresponsive and you'll have all kinds of issues and ghost in the machine, those type of things. So you don't want to create that loop. Once we get the second unit out of the box and power it up, you should see it come online. So this gives me a quick chance to explain the LEDs on the back of the unit. So if you're looking at the back of the unit, you have power, LAN 1, LAN 2, wireless LAN, and then a signal strength meter, red, orange, green. So when you initially power it up, all lights are going to come on, maybe minus the LAN 2 light, then all lights are going to go off except for power. The wireless LAN light and some signal strength lights will typically come back on. Then at some point, the wireless LAN light will turn off again. And then when the wireless LAN light comes back on for a second time, it's going to be a period of about 90 seconds after that to where you can access the unit. So the whole process is probably 2 to 3 minutes. Now, if you remember back, we know that this unit is a 192.168.10.51. So if I wanted to, I could go back to my command prompt and I could simply start my ping, and this is going to tell me when the unit is coming online, because we have to wait for the unit to power up, and we also have to wait for this initial bridge connection to be established. So that was about 2 to 3 minutes. So my wireless LAN light, once it came back on, it was a good minute or so before it started to respond to pings. So at this time, once it starts to respond to pings, I should be able to access the login screen. And there's about a 30-second delay after that too. So if you try to rush it, you might get a page cannot be displayed. But thanks to not being able to type very well today, I'm not going to have that issue. And of course, the interface looks exactly the same because it's the same model of unit, it's simply in a different configuration. So we've gone through network basic and network wireless. I'm going to go to network wireless on the second unit because it's set up a little differently. So again, it's still in TDMA, but it is set up as a WDS station. So where you remember the other unit was a WDS access point. If you hit channel configuration here, this is all going to be grayed out by the factory defaults. That's been a recent change, I believe, in some of the firmware. And we could do an AP detection scan on this side as well if we wanted to scan for neighboring APs and whatever channels that they might use. So this will help us in some channel selection. But of course, you're going to have to do your final tweak when you get to the site and start deploying the units. And here, if we had changed our SSID in our main unit, we would need to edit that here. And you could change the SSID that it's trying to connect to for the bridge and the passphrase and encryption. Of course, these are the best two options that you have, WPA2 PSK and WPA2 Enterprise. Most of the time we're going to do PSK with AES. So if we go back to the top and on this WDS station, of course we could change our IP if we wanted to. We don't have to change our IP address, our local IP address, if we want it to pass traffic. So by default, even if it's in a 192.168.10.50 and 51 configuration, it is going to pass whatever traffic crosses that wire. So it doesn't have to match your local IP scheme, but of course it does make programming a little bit easier. And if we view our connections tab on this second unit that's set up as a WDS station, we can see that it is associated with this SSID on channel 48. Here's the physical rate. This isn't the actual rate you'll be able to achieve, but this is the physical rate between the radios based on the chipset. And you have your signal strength and your noise level. So these are a couple of places you can check. You also have this tab on the main unit that's a WDS-AP. So if we go to the connections tab on this unit, it's going to look a little differently. But here's our SSID and our connection list. So this MAC address here, FDBDFB, should match the wireless MAC here, which is going to be under device status, FDBDFB. All right, so that's its neighboring AP on the WDS bridge. And you'll get some basic RxTX and your RSSI. So a couple other things you may want to change on here or may want to explore is your time zone. You can either manually set or synchronize with the PC, or you can use an NTP pool. It all depends on your configuration. And of course, set your time zone and your DST settings. So it just makes it a little easier if you're trying to track what's going on with the system, if you're looking at any logs, or of course, if you're using a scheduler. So in this next tab under management tools, we can run a ping so that the units have ping built into them, or traceroute, and a couple other tests that you can run to help you diagnose and see any kind of connection issues that you might have. You can also control the LEDs on the back of the unit if you don't want them to be on. And you can do a device discovery. So this is going to discover other similar Trendnet Wi-Fi devices, and it's going to give you their MAC address and their IP, which is pretty helpful. The last few things, we can go into System Manager under Account, change our default password. We can look at firmware, which can be downloaded from Trendnet's website. Of course, we can export any changes that we've made or any setups that we have, as well as restore those. And if you get completely lost on these units, you can do a reset. So if you restore this to factory default, it's going to go to the factory default exactly like it looks on the sticker on the back of the unit. So the IP address, the username, the password, they're all going to go back to factory default. So if you ever get lost, you can factory default both of these units. If your bridge isn't working correctly, or you've changed some settings and the bridge is broken, you can go back and you can reset these two. Now, of course, on this one, I can't reach the second unit because I'm still set up in this configuration, and I reset this one first, which means I have no Wi-Fi communication right now to that second unit. So I could move my cable over to the other injector, or I could wait for the bridge to come up if I think the configuration in this second unit is okay. So if you are going to make any major changes with channel or SSID or encryption, you're going to want to do it on your far side unit first, and then make them match on the near side unit. Otherwise, you're going to lose that Wi-Fi communication between the two, and you're going to have to move your cable. So I hope that was helpful in explaining this basic bridge kit. These are good for quite a long distance. Typically, we're going, a couple thousand feet or less. You are going to want to, make sure you're pointing them at each other and you have alignment, free line of sight, and everything else. But they are very simple to take out of the box. They are preconfigured, easy to use. They come with their own PoE injectors, and you should be good to go. A couple issues that I normally see are them just not being pointed correctly or aligned correctly. You also don't want to have one mounted north-south and the other mounted east-west or side shot. They need to both be north-south. So the other thing I would encourage you to do is look at the Trendnet partner program if you're a professional installer. If you're not already a partner, you can go to the partner link and you can look at some of the benefits. Some of the immediate benefits are, a discount, front-end discount. And as you build volume, you're going to build your discount. But also you get level 3 technical support. So these are guys in California that are going to answer the phone and help you out. Very knowledgeable, very helpful. So if you're stuck in a configuration, or even if you have some pre-sales configuration questions or some design questions, this partner program is going to help you out tremendously. So again, I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, you can definitely leave them down below. If you need technical support, definitely call the tech support number or look at the Trendnet partner program and become a Uptrend partner if you're a professional installer. So be sure to subscribe to the channel for future videos. If you have any requests, you can definitely leave them in the comment section below. So I am Wes Stuckey with Security Solutions. Our website is ssireps.com, and we're your Trendnet rep on the East Coast. So if you need any help, definitely get in touch with us. We'd be happy to help you design any systems. Thanks for watching.